Hello and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. I'm your host, Dave Vance. Tonight we have as our very special guest, Monica Irvine, who is challenging the establishment incumbent, Becky Massey, for the Tennessee State Senate District 6. We'll dive into Monica's background, her platform, and what she plans to bring to the table for our community and our state. Stay tuned for insightful conversation. But first, if you have an announcement from a conservative organization that you'd like to broadcast on this show, please send the information to tninformer.tv@gmail.com the Friday before the show. If you want our state to stand up to federal overreach, the best way to do that is support the nullification process bill sponsored by Senator Bowling and Representative Halsey that they intend to bring back next session. Visit tncss.weebly.com/call to action, sign the petition, and follow the instructions on the link. Our state senators and reps need to know that we want this legislation passed when they return in January. Now is the time to get candidates for state office on record as well. D.C. will never fix D.C., only the states can fix D.C., and we have to demand that our state stand up to D.C. and uphold their oath to the U.S. and Tennessee Constitution. The Campaign for Liberty presents Sustainable, the War on Free Enterprise, Private Property, and Individuals. Tom DeWeese, president of the American Policy Center, is the main attraction for this event. It's a free event. Contact Mary Chick Hill, 901-634-7494. The event is Monday, June 24th, 6:30 p.m. at the Germantown Great Hall Center, 1900 South Germantown Road in Germantown, Tennessee. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about the American Policy Center. That is the main organization in our country that deals with the issue of Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, and all of that global stuff coming down from the UN. So if you're not familiar with it, if you've heard something about it, to include things like these smart cities and 15-minute cities, if you have questions, you're going to want to be at that event. Tom has been on this show before. He's very knowledgeable. And it's really worth attending if you don't know anything about that issue. Now a little bit about our guest, Monica Irvine. She's been married for 30 years to Charles. They have 3 children, all boys, and 2 grandchildren, with another one due in 2 weeks. She's a proud daughter of 2 devout Republicans who are always politically active. She started campaigning with her dad in second grade. Her parents love the Republican Party. Her parents taught her to stand up for what is right, regardless of how difficult. They were taught to take action when needed. She's always been a defender of children and women and is the longest serving volunteer at CASA of East Tennessee. CASA stands for Court Appointed Special Advocate. She has spent the last 20 years investigating cases of child endangerment, child abuse, truancy, and more. She has seen a lot of terrible things happen that need to change. Well, thank you for being with us tonight, Monica. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you, Dave, for having me. I'm very good. Yeah. I'm a little weary of a hot summer day in Tennessee knocking on doors, but it's good.
Well, those are just getting started.
Yeah, I know. It's like, why am I even going to complain? This is called Tennessee humidity, and yeah, I love it, but it's hot.
Absolutely. Well, it will definitely wear you out. So let's get right to it. Why are you running?
Well, Dave, I decided to run because I felt like that my current senator just wasn't representing my values anymore, and I decided I couldn't sit still and not do anything about that. I'm a grandmother, and I believe at this point in my life, the best way that I can protect my grandchildren and my children is to run for this Senate seat.
So were there specific things, specific votes that she cast, or just trends that you saw with her that you thought weren't right and that you needed to get involved to fix?
Yeah, for sure. And so there was a triggering event, and then it just kind of snowballed into me learning about a voting record that I could not support. I actually like Senator Massey. She's a very nice lady, and hopefully with politics, this is nothing personal. This is about a voting record. This is about me wanting to make sure that the person that is representing District 6 is in alignment with the values of District 6. So back in February, I got word, we got word, I was on a board member of Tennessee Right to Life, and we got word that Senator Massey had co-sponsored a bill that was going to drastically expand abortions in Tennessee, making more exceptions for abortion in Tennessee. Senator Massey had the bill that was going to make exceptions for abortion in the case of rape and incest. Senator Briggs, he also sponsored a bill that was going to make exceptions in the cases of fetal anomalies. We were highly disappointed in both of those bills. And so I called up Senator Massey, and she was very gracious and agreed to sit down and talk with me about her decision to sponsor this bill. And so we did, and it was during that meeting that I just, I realized that she did not align with my values. Now listen, Dave, I realize that there are Republicans who want Tennessee to have some more exceptions. I think when Roe v. Wade was the law of the land, truthfully, it wasn't that hard to be pro-life if you were a Republican elected official, meaning it was really important. It was so important to vote for pro-life legislation, but when you're a Republican, it really wasn't that difficult to vote for a 48-hour waiting period so that women couldn't just go in finding out they're in a crisis pregnancy and just have the abortion same day. That made sense to people. It wasn't really that difficult to vote for informed consent, where when women went into an abortion facility, the abortionist, the clinic, the abortion facility had to give them basically information that there were other options. It wasn't very difficult to vote for the pro-life legislation that instead of throwing aborted fetuses in the trash, that you had to respect that human life and give them either a proper burial or a cremation. And so it was kind of, not that controversial if you were Republican to vote for those pro-life pieces of legislation. But as soon as Roe v. Wade got overturned, all of a sudden we had Republicans going, oh, wait a second. Tennessee was triggered back to the pre-Roe v. Wade law, which is that abortions are unlawful in Tennessee except when the life of the mother or health of the mother is at risk. And now you had these Republican legislators trying to back up and say, well, I'm not as pro-life as maybe I once thought. And so that was the case here. And so Senator Massey decided that she wanted to make exceptions here. And listen, I've had people tell me, Monica, you probably need to back off a little bit of your pro-life stand. And I'm like, you guys, if you need a candidate that wants more exceptions in Tennessee, I'm not your candidate. Because I believe that it is a human life inside the womb. And I believe it is wrong to abort life. And I'm for life. I am for sustaining life. I do not believe that we should ask an innocent child to forfeit their very life because their father committed a crime. I don't believe in the United States of America that, we don't make other people pay the penalty for other people's crimes. If one of our family members goes out and commits a crime tomorrow, they are held accountable themselves. So why would we ask a child to pay the penalty of their father's crime? And so I do not support that. I also did not support Senator Briggs's bill with fetal anomalies because that just opened up this entire huge hole of what we might abort children for. So one thing that we have to remember is that the abortion industry wants abortion through 9 months. That is what their goal is. That's what they want. They profit off of death. They profit when they can take a woman or girl in crisis and convince her to have an abortion. That's how they make their money. And so to think that we're going to start trying to bend, that we're going to that we're going to bend on our conservative Republican values that have identified the Republican Party since the beginning. And now we've got Republicans, in my opinion, that are getting a little weak in the knees. And I want to see Republicans with a spine, and I want to see them stand for life and not be afraid to talk about it. We've gotten so bad at talking about this issue. So that is one issue. It's not the only issue, but of course it was a triggering event that made me realize that Senator Massey did not reflect my values anymore. What happened, though, is sadly, like a lot of people, and shame on me for not knowing this, but I didn't know the voting record of Senator Massey on everything. You know, our elected officials, they send out their newsletters, usually once a month. Or maybe not that often, and they show and they'll send out all of the bills that they voted on that they're really proud of, but they don't send you everything.
Nope.
And I don't understand why citizens, why we don't demand that it's easily found that we see our elected officials' entire voting record. Today, I heard my opponent say the Tennessee Assembly website is the most user-friendly, most transparent website in America. Well, it might be true if you knew how to, if you knew how to manage it, but for an average citizen to just go on the Tennessee Assembly website and to be able to see all of the votes that their elected official has voted on, no, you can't find that easily. Oh my gosh, it took me months to really see all of Senator Massey's votes. But what happened is when I realized that she wasn't voting the way I thought she would vote, I just started looking deeper and deeper. And it's like every week I would find another vote and I was like, wait, what? So for instance, one of the things I've been so disappointed in is how many times my opponent literally refuses to cast her vote. So that means you're there, you're
Right.
present, but you take a present but not voting. So for instance, Senator Massey took a present but not voting. She's on Health Committee. We had the bill that said in Tennessee it's going to be unlawful for healthcare providers to administer the transgender chemical transitioning drugs to minors. And Senator Massey refused to vote on that issue.
Wow.
How do you refuse to vote on that issue? Do you think it's, are you going to ride the fence? Are you going to try to stay in that middle so you don't offend a certain voter population? Or do you not know if it's wrong or right that we use these experimental drugs on our children? That's
To change their gender, which is insane.
well, which is actually a lie because you actually can't.
Right.
You actually can't change your gender. You can cut off your body parts and you can dress differently, but you can't. It's a lie.
Yep.
And if I love you, I have to tell you the truth. And we do not have enough Republicans standing and telling the truth. And so we're definitely not going to do it to a child. And so in Senator Massey's defense, listen, I appreciate every good vote Senator Massey has made. She did vote to support the bill where we said it's going to be unlawful in Tennessee to give children transgender surgery. It's just that she wouldn't go far enough to say we're not going to give them the transgender chemical transitioning drugs. I realize that I'm not going to agree with my elected official on every single vote.
Right.
But on the most important votes, when it comes to protecting our children, when protecting the unborn, when protecting the Second Amendment, when protecting all of our civil liberties, you have to vote according to the Constitution and according to people's civil rights. And so I just was so disappointed in that. Also in Health Committee, in fact, Senator Massey and I both spoke today, and she tried to insinuate that the information that's on my card that my little card that I give out to people at the door, that it wasn't completely accurate. I got this information straight from that transparent website called the Tennessee Assembly website. It's just a voting record. And so she was on Health Committee, and Senator Janice Bowling's bill that said healthcare providers shall not administer vaccines to minors without prior parental consent. Senator Massey took a present but not voting. Now, what happened was Senator Massey said the reason she did that is because of the wording wasn't quite right, but she ended up voting. Once the House passed it, the Senate adopted the House version, and yes, Senator Massey did support that. But why didn't she vote on it in committee?
Right.
You know, if you don't like a bill, then vote no. I think about that. I think, okay, as citizens, we elect someone. We're actually hiring them to do a job, right?
Right.
We elect
Absolutely.
them, and we actually pay them a salary. I mean, Dave, if you hired an employee and said, okay, you might have to do several responsibilities, but your number one responsibility is to do X, Y, or Z, and your employee said, I'm not feeling it today, I'm not going to do that today, would you keep them?
No, it wouldn't be an employee very long.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, how is that possible that we allow that? Same thing on my card. It talks about how Senator Massey and 7 other Republican senators walked out on the flag bill, you know, the bill. I think it was the last day of session where we said in Tennessee K through 12 schools, you can fly the American flag, you can fly the Tennessee state flag, you can fly your school flag.
Right.
But we are trying to prevent teachers, because they are, from hanging political flags, ideology flags like the gay pride flag or the
Right.
transgender flag in their classrooms. The thing is, if you want to hang a gay pride flag on your house, of course you can do that. This is America. But when you're a teacher and you're in authority over children,
Yeah.
it is not appropriate that you try to persuade or motivate or support political and ideology agendas. And so Senator Massey says, well, the reason I, didn't vote on that bill is because we were told by legal counsel that it probably would not hold up constitutionally. And so we are trying to save taxpayers millions of dollars in the court.
I got to say something about that. They use
Okay.
that lie all the time. If your standard is we might get sued, then you're not going to stand up for anything because you can get sued over anything. That's a ridiculous. That's essentially no standard. All this stuff that's being pushed, a lot of it's being pushed from the federal government, but our state is complicit with it. They are allowing it, and that ideology right there, that thought process right there of we might get sued, and we're saving you money. It seems to me they're all about money, and really not a whole lot else. Way too many of them. Now, my senator was one of those 7 as well that did not vote, and he gave me a garbage excuse. I won't cover it right now, but that was Senator Stevens from the 24th District. Or actually, he gave somebody else a garbage excuse, and I've been told about it. But those are the kind of things that happen. And you mentioned I don't know if you were referring to the puberty blockers earlier when you were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the bill passed in 2021 by Farrell Hale. That was
Passed without Senator Massey's vote, yeah.
No,
I mean, that bill that made it unlawful in Tennessee for us to give the transgender puberty blockers did pass.
right. No, but I mean originally, the bill originally in 2021, if we are talking about the same one, it prevented puberty blockers for those in Tanner stage 1 development, which was basically from age 1 to age 8. But it allowed from age 9 to 17. And if you remember a few years ago, Matt Walsh exposed what was going on in Vanderbilt. Well, after that was exposed, they realized that our state legislature, when they passed that law, and there's a little audio of Farrell Hale saying, hey, this is basically to legitimize what Vanderbilt has been doing in regards to these surgeries. And so they passed it. And, I wish I could say it was barely passed, but most of the Republican senators voted for it. And then it got exposed when Matt Walsh broke the story, and in the very next session, after they were exposed, then they repealed that puberty blocker law. I just think it's pathetic that we have to worry about that kind of stuff with a Republican supermajority.
Well, that's what I mean. It's unbelievable that we have to worry about it. But the thing is that when you've got so many candidates who take the amount of money they take from the PACs,
Yep.
and how many of those PACs are from the health care sector,
Yep.
you come on, you're not going to be able to vote against them all the time when they're the ones funding you. And so until we cut these strings from these healthcare PACs and all PACs, until we cut that string off, you're going to see people not be able to do it because, come on, we're all human. If I needed money and you gave it to me, and a year from now, you came to me and said, "Hey, Monica, listen, I need you to not support this bill that's coming up." Would I be more likely or less likely? It's not rocket science to figure out why there's a struggle here and why we're seeing Republican after Republican bend, and we're going, wait, how did they vote for that?
Right.
And so it's just something that we've got to cut these strings. So yeah, you know, of course I appreciate good votes, but I need to count on my representative to vote correctly on these essential bills that are protecting our children and families. And for me to have to worry about, I've got to go investigate every little vote because I just don't know who's influencing my representative. It's just, it's not acceptable. And here I sit. Now I could talk about there's a lot of things, and Senator Massey today, I don't blame her for this. She said, "Here, Monica, I've voted on thousands of bills in the past 12 years, and so she's going to pull out the votes that whatever. I don't know how she described it, but I would call it the bad bills." And so, in all fairness, it's true, right? But the bills that matter to me the most are bills that violate our Constitution or bills that are a danger to children, the family, our way of life. I'm sorry, but you've got to stay strong on that. And so let me jump, Dave, if you don't mind, to a couple.
Before
Oh,
you
go ahead.
do, I want to say this. Part of the
Okay.
problem is, yes, she votes on thousands of bills. Number one, that's still no excuse for not reading them, okay?
That's
You're
right.
still responsible for what you sign your name to. The other thing is, there's nothing that said, the reason why we have thousands of bills every year is because of the lobbyists up there, okay? And I'm not saying lobbyists are inherently evil, but the legislature, most of it, we got all kinds of bills already. We have all kinds of laws already. There's no way anybody understands all the laws we currently have yet every year, and it always is something from these different lobbying groups, and it's normally not focused on the average person, okay? It's not normally, in most cases, standing up for the Constitution or the rights of average people. But there's nothing that says they have to, they could make it a rule in the House or the Senate if they wanted, hey guys, we're only going to do X number of bills. The House has a restriction. The House can only take up 15 bills a year. Now, problem is there's no limit on the Senate side, and every bill has to have a House sponsor. So there may be a limit on the House side of what they can take up, but the Senate's unlimited, so then they're going to go get the House sponsors. They are doing way too many bills, but that's their fault. They could limit that if they wanted to.
Well, and it's how we view, because they believe that their success is how many bills have their name on it. No, success is measured by the prosperity of Tennessee. And my gosh, there are needs for bills and legislation. Of course there are. But we also don't need unnecessary regulation, and just every bill is another level of regulation. And so I feel like every bill that is passed, there needs to be a bill that comes off, a law that
Yep.
comes off.
Yep.
But there's got to be some limit to just, and also the thing is, I see these laws being passed, but then no one knows about them. The populace has not been educated on them. There'll be bills about law enforcement, and law enforcement doesn't exactly know. do how many Tennesseans know that it's literally unlawful to put your finger on your phone in the car? I mean, it's just sometimes there's laws that are made that it's just there's no way we could actually enforce it.
Right.
And then there's other laws that there's kind of like the one that passed that the sexual content material has to come out of the schools, but there's no consequences.
No
It just
enforcement
says that.
mechanism. Yeah,
But
Tennessee has a problem with passing toothless laws. We have a lot of that, especially it seems like when it comes to our getting the garbage out of our schools. You know,
Well, and Elaine Davis made a good point to me, and I get this. I mean, I think there could be an argument for this where she said, "Well, Monica, sometimes, you just have to add the teeth the next session, or we just would never get it passed." And so sometimes there is kind of a stepping stone, and I could see how that might be accurate, but yeah, we have a lot though that haven't had teeth for years. And
I would
so
add the caveat to she says we have to do it, can't get it all at once, and I got that to a degree, but let's remember, we've had a Republican supermajority for over 10 years. I think it's closer to 12 years. We've controlled the House and Senate for over 12 years. It's not even been close. Whatever we can't get, haven't got, is because of our Republican supermajority. That's not very conservative overall. I mean, we do have some good ones. They're not all bad. But
yeah.
we do not have, that supermajority is super in number only, not in results for sure.
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, for sure.
So let's go to
Um,
some of your issues. Parental rights and school choice is what you've got listed first.
oh, sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I love talking about this issue. And, you know, every time that I knock on someone's door and they say, "Hey, where do you stand on vouchers?" And I tell them, and they're like, "I am absolutely 100% opposed to vouchers, and I'm going to vote according to that issue." I'll say, "Well, tell me why you're against it." And, and I mean, it's not that they don't have reasonable concerns, but I'll say, "Well, can I tell you why I'm for it?" And then as soon as I start going through it, it's like, "Oh, well, yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, well, that's a good point." And so, listen, hopefully I'm not naive enough to think that vouchers are going to solve all of our problems in education. They're not going to. And when we do pass it, and we will pass it, it's also, there's going to be unintentional consequences. There just is. The education system is so diverse and so complex. There is, but it's like, are we committed to educating children? Is that our priority? I actually had a woman tonight at an event say, totally against vouchers. She says, "I want my tax dollars I am paying to support public education. That is what I support." I go, "Well, hold on. Is that really what you're supporting? Are you committed to public education, or are you committed to educating children? Is it the same thing? Because if you are committed to educating children, do you trust parents? Do you want to do what's best for children?" And so I support school choice, 100% support it. But Dave, I believe we have got to be so careful with how this piece of legislation is written. I think it was ridiculous, the three different pieces this year. When I heard Governor Lee come out and say, his first, when he made his public announcement and said the ESAs are not going to affect our public school budgets at all. This is going to be coming from a different pot. I'm sitting there thinking, why would you say that? Maybe you'll get away with that for a year or two while you're left in office. Eventually, it is going to affect the public school budget. So let's not lie to the public. Let's just be honest, and then let's let everyone make a decision where they stand. But so really, the best way for me to talk about this issue is to share with you some stories, just because as I meet with parents and as I meet with teachers, I've met with so many, I just get more and more convinced that we have got to do something different. And so, for instance, I met some grandparents at the door, had custody of their sixth and seventh grade grandkids, and lived in very meager means. And the grandfather said, you know, our granddaughter's thriving, sixth grade, loves school, seems to be doing really well. Our grandson, though, is on the autism spectrum, and it's just not working. He said he's very sensitive to noise and just to the chaos, and he goes to a middle school that is maxed out, 25 kids a classroom. And because he's high functioning, he's just placed in the regular classroom, but it's not working. He said, we would love to be able to find a different solution, whether we could find a school with smaller classroom sizes, but even if we brought him home and homeschooled him, we just think he would do a lot better with a much quieter environment. But then I worry that we wouldn't have the money to get him therapy for his autism, and I really think we need that. To me, he's a perfect candidate. This family is a perfect candidate for a school voucher. Does this grandfather deserve to have that choice for his grandson? He's fine with his granddaughter staying there, but he wants a different solution for his grandson. Met another mother, freshman at high school in Knox County. Son comes home with a book reading assignment. Mom knew about the book, did not want her son reading that book. Had a homosexual kind of theme to the book.
Right.
Didn't understand why it was part of the assignment, but so she sent an email to the teacher and said, "Hey, could we have an alternative, reading assignment for this book report? It doesn't, it goes against our family values." So the teacher replied back and said, "Oh, you're going to have to contact the principal. She handles these situations." It's like, okay, so why do we have to make this difficult for the parent? So the parent reaches out to the principal. Principal wants the parent to come to the office. Once again, another complication. Why do we have to bring the parent into the school? Mom goes down there. After about 30 minutes, she says, it's not, the principal wasn't rude to me, but for 30 minutes, basically was trying to let me know that she thought I was a very over-the-top, protective, mother that just needed to let my son experience life. But finally agreed that we were going to give this son, give us a different reading assignment. But then the principal warned the mom. She says, we're going to give you an alternative reading assignment, but I want to warn you about something. It looks like your son is on track to go to Honors English next year. And we have a policy at our school that when you're in Honors English, you cannot opt out of any reading assignments. So mom goes home, gets on the computer, and looks at the reading assignments that year for Honors English. She's like, no, my son is not reading some of those books. So what's that mom's option? Met another family.
Can I say, let me say something on that, and I'll just tell you up front, I don't support vouchers, okay? Not because I think our public schools are great. No, I think they're terrible, okay? Not all of them. We got good teachers, but all in all, and it's like we said a minute ago, it's our state. Our state refuses to get the garbage out of our schools, okay? They are complicit with the federal government. So school choice is state money and or federal, however you want to look at it. So a few years down the line, what is to keep the state? Because even with the charter schools, even with these private, ultimately, if they can't now, eventually the states will dictate these things to anybody getting vouchers. Anybody that's getting anything from the state, eventually these things will be dictated to them. And that's one of the things, that's another reason I oppose it. To me, it seems like, hey, look, this might help some people, a small number, maybe a larger number than I think, but we're still spending all those tax dollars and basically brainwashing all those kids in the public school to all these things that we disagree with. I think eventually that will bleed over into the schools into the people that are getting these vouchers. The state will say, well, in order to qualify for the voucher, you have to take this course, that course, read this book, read that. That's just how I see it. I'll just throw it out there.
So Dave, I hear you, and you're not wrong. Of course that's going to happen. But so what? Are we going to just, since the beginning of time, the government is trying to overreach. That's the innate nature of government. It's always going to encroach upon our individual liberties. And we're going to have to fight it like we fight it today. And we're going to win some and we're going to lose some. But what? We're going to just keep telling parents, sorry, you have no parental authority. The teachers get to decide what's best for your child. The only way I know to start putting pressure is to allow parents to have some other choices. Yes, I do believe that the government will try that. And that's why I'm so determined that this bill has to be written so carefully, because the bills that I saw did not have protections to make sure that our state government was not going to require testing for private schools and homeschool families. I mean, homeschool families, half of them want no part of this because, of course, they don't trust the government, as they shouldn't.
Right.
But that's why it's important that you elect people like me that will fight every step of the way to make sure that that doesn't happen. Now, listen, you also have an option. You don't have to take it if you don't want it. But it's just the idea that we're going to not give children opportunities because of what might happen in the future. That doesn't make sense to me either. And you know, our government has already basically set money aside, has earmarked money for every child in our state. Like, it's going to cost $8,000 to $12,000 to educate each child in Tennessee. So that money has been earmarked for Johnny's education. So what? Do we really think that parents are not capable of deciding how to best educate their child? And so we're going to just not allow parents to have some other options when the schools today, many of them will not allow parents to have parental authority. Now, does that mean that I don't support public education? Of course not. And it doesn't mean that I don't support public school teachers. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to continue to fight that we get all this crap out of our public schools. What is someone going to tell me we can't do both? I just don't think so.
Well, so far we can't get the garbage out of our schools. And right now, if you go, as I understand it, with the private schools, and of course this is why a lot of the private schools, as you said, are concerned that they won't have these protections. Now, of course, the big thing in here is the money, all right? But it is tax dollars, all right? And I just can't, I don't understand, I don't trust this administration. I don't trust the state. This is me personally. I think all they'll do with this voucher program is what a lot of the private schools fear and why they don't want it. I think that's what they will do. And so if we can't win the fight on having them clean up the current public schools, which, by the way, our state constitution requires us to fund 70% of the cost of education. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that we exclude a voucher program. It certainly wouldn't. But I just don't see how, it's almost as if the same people who won't fix the current schools want to start something else. I have zero confidence in that. But we'll agree to disagree.
Well, I also look at it, so my husband and I own restaurants. We've had restaurants for 30 years, okay? We have worked hard at these restaurants. But so if my husband and I were serving lousy food and our service was terrible, and we told our customer, when our customer complained about getting a bad meal, well, listen, if you just gave us more money, we would serve better food.
But you're private sector. That's a whole different thing than the school. Here's the deal. The state does not have the backbone to fire the people in these bad schools. That's the deal. They don't have the backbone to make the hard choices. That's what it comes down to, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you this. Really, Dave, I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just believe that we've got to give parents some options. I don't disagree with you that what you're afraid is going to happen won't happen. I just believe there's a way to do both. And I believe there is a way. When we write the legislation, I actually sent Governor Lee the Utah bill, school choice bill, because I thought it laid out really not that it was perfect, but laid out really good protections for private schools and homeschool families to not be subject to any testing. Of course, they don't want that because then that just turns them into a public school. But you know, I went and met with it was a private school up in Morristown, a Christian school, and they were doing a little a thing about school choice, and they were talking about how right now, I'm not going to have the number right, so I'm not going to quote it, but they already give scholarships to children, you know, less fortunate families. But what they're hoping is that when the voucher program gets passed, that it will really expand how many students that they can give scholarships to. And so, like right now, it's true. You're not with your $8,000 or $7,800. You're not going to send your kids to Webb. You're not, or CAK. It costs $28,000 a year to go there, but you have to give it time for that money to start, for people to start coming and forming the different educational differences. But teachers are the same thing. Okay, just like this day, let me ask you this, and we'll move on to another subject. But like I had a second grade teacher this year, because I've interviewed a lot of teachers about this too. She says, Monica, honestly, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I would vouch that I've got several second graders in my class this year that are suffering from PTSD because I've got such a violent child in our class this year that every day me, along with all the kids, second graders, are walking on eggshells because we don't know when this kid's top is going to blow, when he starts throwing chairs, throwing pencils, and then all of us, me and the kids, have to exit the classroom, wait out in the hallway, someone from the office comes down, stays in the class until this kid calms down. However long it takes, we have to stay out in the hallway. She said, it's like I've got a classroom of children who are living in a domestic violence situation. So, you know, Dave, for the last 20 years, I've investigated cases of child abuse. A lot of that was domestic violence issues. When a child is in a domestic violent home, that is considered child abuse. That's why we remove kids from that home, because kids, it changes the development of their brain when they're around that. And so, you know, yes, we have a lot of things to fix in our schools, but Dave, the list has gotten so long.
I got to say something about your example. Okay. That is a perfect example of how our state is failing. That we would allow a second grader to shut down a classroom. Who made the decision that somebody, and it's tragic that he's, you know, obviously that's tragic, yeah. But who made the decision that that kid is allowed to do that to a class and nothing happened? That's ridiculous.
All over our
I know
state,
that, but it's ridiculous. The state is allowing it, is my point. That's my point, is the state is allowing it. So the same people who can't control a second grader want to do a voucher program. The same people that made the rules that prevent people from dealing with an out of control second grader want to pass a voucher program.
No, it's not them. It's the parent that wants to take their child out of that class and find a different solution. But because of economics, cannot do that.
Right.
And so I'm just saying right now, we're forcing parents to accept all of these broken things about our public school system. And we do need to fix those things. But in the meantime, we've got kids that are suffering tremendously. Most teachers, if you were to interview, because all the teachers I've interviewed, all of them do say one thing in common, all of them, that they're teaching today, the content, the amount of content that they're teaching, if they've been teaching more than 10 years, is about, they'll say between a half and 3/4 of what they were teaching 10 years ago because of behavioral issues and special needs issues in the classroom. So, you know, we sit there and go, well, why are kids not learning? Well, because teachers are having to spend so much time testing and handling behavioral issues. I had another teacher tell me, she's in the special education department at her school, and she said every week, Monica, every year they add more and more tests that they want me to give to the students. And every time I have to test, that's time I'm not standing talking and teaching. Anyway, all right, let's go to another topic. I know we can go round and round about that.
Let's go to the Second Amendment.
Yeah.
We already started off with a bang, but let's go to the Second Amendment.
So I'm a Second Amendment upholder. Bottom line, I believe that we have the right to bear arms, period. Just period. I was disappointed that my opponent voted against the bill that was, we had the bill that said years ago that prevented 18 to 20-year-olds to get a concealed handgun carry permit. And I think that's a violation of the Second Amendment, right? Because if you're a legal adult in the United States of America and we're going to send you across the globe to protect freedom around the world, you absolutely have the right to bear arms on your home soil. Now, as a mom with 3 boys, do I want my 18-year-olds to have a gun? No, I don't. Do they have the right to? Yes, they do. And so, I would like to remove the sentence. I don't want to misquote it, but of course, in our Tennessee state constitution, it does not line up with the Second Amendment because, of course, it says that our state legislator has the authority to
regulate the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. And of course that violates the Second Amendment. Of course I disagree with that. I am adamantly opposed to red flag laws. I just want to say this about any issue like this. I think as Republicans, we are also, and I shouldn't generalize everyone, but I think a lot of Republicans are so bad at talking about the Second Amendment, so let's use an example. When we talk about school safety, it's kind of hard not to talk about the Second Amendment and then someone not bring up school safety. Right. So my grandkids go to Knox County Public Schools. Of course I care about their safety. But when we as Republicans talk about the Second Amendment, especially when something has happened, we're like, nope, I believe in the Second Amendment, period, done, don't ask me anything else. And I'm like, y'all, we've got to talk about it, but then we also have to talk about all the things we care about with safety. But, so many people, I believe, that don't understand the Second Amendment, honestly, just don't understand the history of the world. It doesn't take too many history lessons to learn about, to know that one of the first things the Nazis did was they confiscated the Jews' weapons. One of the first things Fidel Castro did, like within 2 weeks of him getting into office, there started being radio announcements throughout Cuba that told people they had to turn in their assault weapons. Venezuela, the same thing. I guess we have a false sense of security here in America, and we just think that could never happen. We could never have a tyrannical government. I mean, it's like... it scares me to think that people are so naive about history. Yep. And I think if we taught history, then it would solve a lot of the issues that we're fighting about when it comes to constitutionally protected rights. Yeah. I believe in the Second Amendment.
So you're not a second butter then. We have a lot of people in our legislature that are second butters. I believe in the Second Amendment, and they have this long line of exceptions.
No, I'm not.
Okay, good.
I do look closely. So when I first, and this might not make you feel confident in me, but when I first heard about a red flag law, I didn't know what it was, and I was like, well, what is it? And so I did what I do with all issues. I wanted to learn about it. And so when I learn about any issue, I try my best to find people who are adamantly for it and adamantly against it. And I like to hear both of them. You convinced me how I could be wrong. So I really looked at red flag laws. I studied the states. I looked at all the states that had passed versions of red flag laws. And then I looked at statistics about what was happening. It was so fascinating to me because it really wasn't until I started studying the states that had passed it that, you really see why it is such a violation of your due process and a violation of the Second Amendment. There's no question about that. Yeah. But what was interesting, Florida, has a red flag law. And so I looked at all the counties in Florida. And what was interesting is, and this was about a year ago when I looked at this, so something could have changed in the past year, but there were basically two counties in Florida that their law enforcement departments were really using that law. But when I saw the rest of the counties, law enforcement, when they would be interviewed and talk about the red flag law, they would just say, look, this puts our officers in way too much harm's way. You are asking police officers to show up at someone's door who someone has reported might not need their weapon, and you're asking our police officers to assess whether they're going to confiscate someone's weapons. We're not doing that, and so they just don't even abide by it. You have most of the law enforcement just ignore the law, and so, but people don't understand. They don't understand the definition of due process. And so, once again, sadly, I wish I had memorized the Constitution. Of course, I keep one in my purse, and when someone asks me, often I just have to pull it out but if we just taught the Constitution in our grade school and middle school and high school, it would prevent so many of these issues that we fight about.
Absolutely. Economic freedom and prosperity.
Well, so I could go on about this forever, but so one of the big things that I differ with my opponent on when it comes to this is I am adamantly against public-private partnerships.
Absolutely.
I believe it is such a it's just not appropriate for government, and I believe it violates the Tennessee Constitution. And once again, I'm sorry I can't quote all this. You probably can. There are those of you that are so good at this. But we have an article in the Tennessee Constitution, and you go look it up and back me up on this. But it says our state shall not give its credit to private companies, private organizations, private entities, et cetera, et cetera. It's just simply not appropriate.
Yep.
It's not the role of government. And so a lot of people don't even understand what this means. And so for those of your listeners listening, a public-private partnership is when our state government literally makes us a partner with a private company. So for instance, they did this when they gave Ford Motor Company almost $900 million to build their electric car plant in West Tennessee. Now, when you first hear about this, it sounds, oh, this might be a good thing. It's going to bring all of these jobs to Tennessee.
Right.
The thing is lots of reasons I disapprove and believe it violates our Constitution. But number one is when there's public-private partnerships, basically your state government is picking who wins and who loses. For instance, my husband and I, we've employed hundreds of employees in Tennessee the past 30 years. We've never been given a tax credit. Our government's never given us a little extra money to build a new parking lot.
Right.
So why didn't we win? Why didn't we get the deal?
Yeah.
But so Ford Motor Company gets the deal. And so once you become a partner, so Dave, if you and I went into business together, would you care about the decisions that I make in my personal and public life if we were in business together?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, and I would care about yours too, because we both would affect each other's.
Right.
And we both would be hopefully, we both would have a vested interest in making sure our company succeeded. So now you've got the state of Tennessee now is on the hook for wanting to make sure Ford, a private company, succeeds. So then what are they willing to do to make sure this private company succeeds? Well, one thing they're willing to do is to use eminent domain.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They've literally confiscated minority-owned farms to make sure it's got enough property to build this plant.
Yeah, well, and the whole Titan deal too, funding the Titans to build a new stadium. And, those are the kind of things that lobbyists do. And like I say, not all lobbyists are bad, but unfortunately, the average person doesn't have a lobbyist up there, okay?
That's right. That's right. And so then you think about it. So I won't say who, but I've had legislators say, we've done these deals with other companies. And so when those companies get tired, like, get tired of whatever the deal is, they just come to the state house asking for a change in the deal. And because we're already in business with them and we want to keep them here, we want to keep them happy, we just bend and bend every time they ask us to.
Yep.
And so, and I have seen that, like, FedEx is a good example. They were paying $88 million in 2019 for airline fuel tax that goes to the infrastructure and taking care of the airports that they use as part of their business. But they got tired of paying that. And so then our state house went ahead and put a cap on it at $5 million to keep FedEx happy. Now, I don't blame FedEx for asking that. I mean, I would too if I were them. But it's why once we go into business with them, it never ends. All the little things that you have to do to keep them happy. Whereas what do I believe in? I believe in a level playing field as much as we can. That's why I believe that we should put a cap on property taxes in Tennessee. I had someone say, Monica, the fact that you are a proponent of capping property taxes, it's almost as if you're saying you don't trust your local government to manage the budget.
Well, I would wonder about you if you did, because I'm sure your local one is not better than most of the others.
Yeah. And then another thing, just one more thing to kind of drill this in the ground. Sorry, but what people don't know, another reason it's not appropriate. So for instance, Ford, no offense to anyone that drives a Ford, but most people don't know that Ford has become one of the most liberal companies in America.
Absolutely.
So they have what's called Ford Foundation. So the CEO of Ford, Ford the Third, sits on the foundation. And so it's where they funnel money to organizations that they support. So if you look up Ford Foundation, your listeners can look it up. You're going to see how proud they are of the millions of dollars that they've donated to Planned Parenthood International and to the Transgender Care for Minors. And so it's like you've put me into business with a company that goes against everything that I'm fighting for.
Right, and they're going to have a lot of money to donate in elections. Here's another thing too. Remember, the whole Ford plant was all based on the electric vehicle. Well, the electric vehicle, the so-called need for them is all based on this whole climate change garbage and reducing our carbon footprint garbage. So here we are. Our state is supporting something that we know is garbage with our dollars.
And what's worse is Ford now has made 3 major announcements in the past 3 months. Every announcement is that they're slashing their electric car production because of a lack of demand. Just last week, it was another slash of their electric truck. And so now what are we going to do? We've already given this money to Ford. That's why your state government should not get into bed with a private company.
Absolutely. Now, we've already established you're pro-life. So in lieu of asking that, early on when I started the program, I talked about the nullification bill that will come back up this session. Where do you stand on the concept and idea of nullification, state nullification of unconstitutional federal laws?
Excuse me, Dave. Yeah, I've already signed on to that I support it. So of course I support it. People don't realize that if you actually read the Constitution, the federal Constitution, it allocates what we will allow our federal government to do.
What we delegate.
But the government is with the state. It's the state that holds the power because it's the people that hold the power. And so as a people, if our federal government violates our Constitution and overreaches the authority that we allotted to them through the Constitution, you guys, of course, we can call them out on that. And so what I love about the Nullification Act is that it has this, to me, this beautiful process of, I think, of great fairness, where we allow the governor to take a stand, and we hope that he will, as some governors in America have had a spine and will do. And then, if your governor doesn't see it, then you've got your state legislature, and you give them every opportunity to demand to say that no, you are asking our state to do something that we know violates the Constitution. And then you've got your county and your local governments, and ultimately you have the people. But even when it comes to the people, it's still a vote.
Right,
It's still
absolutely.
a
Yeah,
vote.
yeah.
So I don't actually understand why anyone is against it. I mean, I do, but I'm like,
Well, and let's talk about that real quick, because you'll
okay.
hear a lot of legislators, oh, it's not constitutional. Well, wait a minute now. In 2021, during the whole COVID scam, there was a resolution passed by our state legislature. The governor didn't sign it, but in the Senate it was sponsored by Randy McNally. In the House it was sponsored by Cameron Sexton. Now, I know that neither one of them wrote this resolution, okay? I know that. But the key thing in this resolution, it says that essentially powers not, and this is my paraphrase, powers we didn't delegate, we retained. We have not only a right, but a responsibility because of our oath to nullify federal action that overreaches. And oh, by the way, not just limited to court action. Every Republican senator, maybe there was one that didn't sign it, in the House, in the Senate and in the House. It was just about unanimous. And now they act like, oh, well, we can't do that. You know, it didn't make it through the committee in 23, didn't make it through it got referred to summer study this year. And I know my state senator, who was one of the people who signed it in 2021 at a recent GOP event in Henry County, and this is Senator Stevens, well, nullification's unconstitutional. Well, wait a minute. It wasn't unconstitutional in 2021 when you and all your peers in the Senate signed it. How did it become unconstitutional over the last 2 years? But yeah, it's there. Just, so if somebody gives you grief, it's SJR 90005, and I'm going to send you that link, and you can pull it out, and I bet you even, well, I know Senator Massey signed it. She was on there as well. So just keep that in mind. But hey, any closing thoughts or any ideas about like the first piece of legislation that you want to do day one?
you know, I really don't want to commit to a first piece of legislation. You know, I believe that if I'm elected, when I'm elected, that my job really is to listen to the constituents and to see what my constituents, what they want. But I can tell you that I am always, I definitely want to fix some of our Second Amendment issues. That is really important. I do want to protect schools. I want to have perimeter fencing around our schools in Tennessee that is electrically monitored. And as I have talked to law enforcement basically has told me, some people in law enforcement, I said, Monica, we need some more time. We need to be called when a fence is gone through,
Right.
instead of a building. You
Yeah.
know, when and if you sometimes 2, 3, 4 minutes is life saving. And so, you know, some people go like, "Oh my gosh, Monica, you're wanting to make our schools look like prisons." No, you all, I don't. But this is where we're at. So we can talk all day long about how sad it is that we have the kind of situation that we have, and there are so many reasons for it. But really, what I want to do is I want to make sure my grandchild's school is secure. That's what I want.
Right.
And so if that means that teachers are armed because they choose to be armed and
Yeah.
have taken the training, if that is you know, having an armed resource officer or two, and if that means perimeter fencing, then yes, I'm willing to do that. And so I want to look for solutions. Of course, I care. But I want to do right by you. I want to do right by the people of Tennessee and by District 6. But I want Tennessee to align its legislation with our Constitution. It's just, to me, it's the only way that we can safeguard and know that we are as close to the right path as we can be. And so I believe that's our measuring stick. That's the safest measuring stick, is our Constitution, both our federal and our state Constitution. And we need to make those be better aligned. So, Dave, thank you for having me on. And
Thank you for
I
being with us.
appreciate it.
I've enjoyed having you. And hey, good luck to you. Good luck to you.
Thank Thank you so much.
And
Bye.
there's your website, and of course there's also, I'm sure there's a donate button on your website, so those of you who might be inclined, but her site is definitely worth looking at. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell so you never miss a show. Tennessee Informer is also available to listen to as an audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, and other popular podcast platforms. You can find them on our website, tninformer.com. While you're there, take a minute to sign up for our weekly newsletter to stay up to date. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well. Just search for us at TN Informer. Please share us with your friends. Tomorrow night, we did have Chris Morris, SEC members and Giles County GOP chair, scheduled to be on the show. Unfortunately, something has come up and he's not going to be able to make it. So I will be here tomorrow night, and we're going to talk about some inside Tennessee politics and some just general issues and problems with our supermajority. Also, join us Wednesday for a special show at 10:30 a.m. when our guests will be Rick Revel and Gene Andrews, here to clear up a lot of the lies and misinformation about one of the greatest military leaders ever from Tennessee. That would be Nathan Bedford Forrest. We will also expose the farce that was Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. Hope you'll join us. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.